What's up, citizens, and welcome back to City Daily. And as usual, you have me, Kieran, and Steve is with us as well. But you might spy an extra special little guest down there. It is Sam Lee has joined us. Have a quick little wave. Hello, Sam. If you don't know for whatever reason who Sam is our he's Manchester City's correspondent for The Athletic and does a fantastic job on it as well. And we've got him here to talk to us today a little bit about the club, mostly about transfers. Gonna be honest, Steve is here, so it's the only thing that's going to get talked about. Let's get right into it. And Steve, what is your first question?
My first question is Kane, mate. How are we looking? What's the percentages now with it obviously being so close to the dreaded transfer deadline day? Because I don't think Spurs will go right to the end, surely.
I think they will. The one thing I can offer now is that they will. So last week when I did our podcast on The Athletic, I was able to offer a load of info, but the mad thing was there was a load of info on one side and a load of info on the other side, and there's no way it could have both been true. And it was there were ways it could have both been true, but it was just such a strange situation. And my whole point over probably the 10 minutes I discussed it, basically talking myself, was that middle of last week, a load of people come to me independently saying there's been a breakthrough, there's been an agreement over what the fee would be. Next week it'll be paid. And then there was other sources that were like, City are getting things ready for an announcement like Thursday, obviously the Thursday that was 2 days ago as we record this. And it's like, in terms of sources and how I rate them and things, which I've talked about before and I won't go into again, but it's basically like the tier system. Tier systems get applied to that journalist. It's kind of, I have to do that. I don't actually do that, but it's kind of like that. It's like the people who tell me, I'm like, well, I know I can believe this guy, or well, I'm not really sure about that. So there was probably 3 or 4 people who I'm pretty sure this guy's good, but I can't be like 100% sure. But when there's 3 or 4 of them, you think, it must be coming from somewhere. And obviously, I know some of the people that they're directly getting it from. So it's like, right, okay, well, this is pretty good. But I couldn't be like nailed to the mast on it. But then some others who were just like, oh yeah, City are ready to do this on Thursday. And I'm like, well, I know who this person is and I know they'd be involved in that. So that has to be true. So if I was working for a different company with maybe not as many colleagues with contacts at Spurs saying other things, I'd have probably been like, well, this is going to all kick off next week. And I'd have probably looked very stupid. But because I respect my colleagues and I know they've got really good contacts, it was like, they were saying stuff like, and this was in the middle of last week before the Spurs game, all leading up to it. They were just like, we've not heard anything of that. There's been no bid, there's been no approach. Levy's not picking up the phone, which we'll go back to. And then even after the game on Sunday, they were like, I've spoken to people who are at the game, in the box, whatever. And they were like, nobody at City spoke to Levy. It's like there's been no contact or whatever. And I spent all this week going, well, we're just going to have to see. And I genuinely didn't know. You would think, and this is kind of an abridged version, so it's difficult to put across because people listen to this might just think, well, everyone was wrong, and maybe they were, but you would think, given that sheer amount of info, so probably 6 or 7 people, and also somebody who was involved in Pau Torres and, Spurs speaking to him, so they knew what Spurs were doing and stuff, and they said, Lautaro Martinez is a done deal if Kane leaves, and it's like, well, if Kane leaves, then they must be thinking about selling him if they're thinking of bringing others in. So it's all of that stuff. You just think, how could I have been that? How I had that much info and still not been sure? It's such a confusing situation, and to back that up, there have been a few articles in the week from the Telegraph, and people have been saying a lot of that's come from Kane's camp or whatever. People have just been joining the dots on that. But in one article, I think it was Wednesday night, it was like City and Kane believe that the £125 million bid that they've made should be enough. And then the very next sentence said, but Daniel Levy and Spurs don't believe any such bid has been made. What?
Yeah.
And if I hadn't had all that stuff about what I've just said about in-house of The Athletic and what I believe and what I'm not sure about, I'd feel a bit uncomfortable saying, how can that be in the Telegraph? Like I know how it can be, but it's like, how can you have that situation? And the good thing is, the Telegraph is so well connected, and we're so well connected, to not be quite sure exactly what's going on is very, very strange. But now I'm at the situation where, so Monday I was thinking, well, if we get to the end of the week and none of these developments that I'd heard about happen, and the ones that I couldn't be sure about, but even so, the ones about Thursday, I was like, right, they must be ready for it. They must be ready for something on Thursday, whatever that is. I don't know, but they're definitely ready for it. But all the other things about agreements and stuff, so right, well, if that doesn't pan out exactly the way that they thought, then the other stuff's probably true, and the other stuff is Spurs aren't picking up the phone and they're not selling. Now, that being said, it's now Saturday, and I'm thinking it's easy to think because now all of these guys who came to me with the info are they're quiet now, and it's like, right, okay, so what's happened? So it's easy for me to think it doesn't look great, but there's still a long time to go. And I was speaking to somebody yesterday who's worked with Daniel Levy. He's been around when Bale and Modric left, and he's like, he just doesn't pick up the phone. He just doesn't do it. He doesn't pick up the phone, and then 2 or 3 days before the window closes, things will start. Now, and he goes, Levy will know all along whether he wants to sell him or not. And look, people, I've got to say, all my colleagues are saying, people around Levy are just saying he's never going to sell. So maybe we have to, maybe at this point we just prepare ourselves for that. But it's not unusual for him to not pick up the phone. He's just going to wait for it to go late in the day. And there was a lot of debate on Friday, wasn't there, about, City being at fault because they should just put a big bid in. And now, first of all, we don't know if that 125 million bid's gone in or not. I heard last week there was some kind of agreement over that, or, it's been reported that it has been put in, and it's also been reported in the same report that it hasn't. It's so mad. So we can't really get to the bottom of that. But also, it may be the case that City are just like, well, we know it needs to go to the end of the window. We know it's going to, because that's how he works. Our leverage is Kane's going to force it, even though his approach to forcing it has been a shambles, by the way. And look, you either don't force it or you do, and you don't try and do both. And I'm not saying, oh, he should make more of an effort to come to City, because that's disrespectful to Tottenham. But whatever you're going to do it. But basically, what I'm thinking now, based on that fact that Levy always blanks people until the end, I'm thinking, against my judgment, which now says it's not looking good, I'm still expecting something to happen towards the end. But maybe it's just a case that they're not selling. It's such a strange scenario. Such a strange scenario.
And it's a weird one for Kane to be in as well, because obviously he's a boyhood club man with Tottenham. So, like you were saying, it is disrespectful essentially to try and force this move. But he is doing it in an absolute shambles. And I'm of the belief right now that I don't think we actually want or need Kane. Well, we probably need a striker of Kane's ability, but whether we want someone for 125, 150 million who's 28 years old is beyond what I think City should be going for. I just think
it's very strange, isn't it, compared to how they've done all their signings over the last 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 or 8.
This window definitely seemed like a cut-off point or just a complete change, because the first signing that we've made was relatively later into the window and was well over the 60 million that we tend to sort of buy at. What do you think sort of prompted that sudden shift in transfer mentality, do you reckon?
Well, I was driving back from Wembley the day after the Community Shield, and I was speaking to somebody, and he said he thought at the time that City had known that FFP was going to be scrapped at the end of the season and replaced with some kind of tax if you overspend. And he was like, I think they think it's going to be scrapped. So if there's no FFP anymore, then you can spend the money you've got. Right, and obviously since then, that the story about FFP being scrapped and being replaced with some kind of like salary cap and tax for people who break it, that's come out. So it's like, that makes me think that was true. And City are under the impression that, well, if FFP goes, then we might as well spend this money now. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's as simple as that. Because how else would you justify it, really? I suppose you could say Pep's got 2 years left on his contract, and maybe you could say that the other Catalans at the club, or at least, Cheeky, or Ferran, maybe both, maybe they all go when Pep goes and they say, we've done a great job here. We've made the CFG. We've made City this great team. It's a young team. The next manager can carry on. But also it would be a successful end. If they can go out and say, we won the Champions League, we've won whatever, we've won 6 Premier League titles in 7 years or whatever it is, then there's just a great way to go out. So there's that motivation. And also, if Harry Kane's 31 by the time they leave and he's got ankle problems, It's not their problem, is it? It's like, okay, well, we got, we won loads of trophies with us. Someone else can deal with it. Everything else was great, so you can't blame us. That kind of Fergie Van Persie thing, you could maybe say that maybe that's part of the reason. That's just kind of a suggestion. I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that.
One I can think of.
It's funny you should say that because I said the exact same thing in my season preview. I said it stinks a bit to me that Kane's got maybe 2 or 3 good years left of top tier football, and Pep's got 2 years left in his contract. Is this just a blowout to try and win the Champions League as soon as possible?
Possibly. Which I don't know, because then maybe you're bringing on the ego side into it. Where they're thinking, well, we can't leave this club. Maybe they're thinking, Cheeky and Ferran are probably thinking, we've done a good 10 years here. We can go and do something else or just retire, because it's one of those where it's like Pep. When people say, would Pep go to another club when he's got a perfect city? I think he would for the challenge, but would Cheeky go and be a sporting director somewhere else? Maybe. But it's like, they could just go and retire now.
Yeah, they've
done a great job. So maybe they're like, well, we'll go and win the Champions League. This is the money. We could justifiably spend it, especially if there's no FFP. Let's crack on. So yeah, maybe it is that. Maybe it is that big blowout to go and do it. But at the same time, they were planning to make these signings before the Champions League final. And if they'd won the Champions League anyway, then they were still planning to make them. So I don't know, maybe they wanted to. But there's always rumours. There's always rumours that if City win the Champions League, Pep will go. And that's not just like rumours from like Italy saying he's going to go to Juve or whatever. There always seem to be internal, and there's always whispers about things that they've said privately that they would go. So I don't know, maybe it's not that, and maybe they just go and they won the Champions League regardless.
Yeah, well. So obviously you have good connections with the club and things, and I'm going to move maybe a little bit away from transfers. I'm sure Steve might drag you back into them for a minute, but you've got your own connections with the club and things, and you have a little bit of knowledge of what's going on inside. Do you know what the reaction is around the club, around fans not liking the new sort of ticketing system, the new kits and things like this? Like, what's going on there?
I don't actually, and sometimes this stuff's normally easy to find because you know, when you started that question, I thought you were going to say, or it's a typical thing. What do the players think about this? And it's like, obviously that's harder to find out than what does Dave in ticketing think. Do you know what I mean? Because like it's feasible that I've just got mates who know people who work for the club or whatever. So I mean that will be easy enough to find out, I'd have thought. And I would have written an article about it this week, but I've been off work ill during the week, and also I was just focusing on waiting for stuff to happen with Kane. So Tuesday, Wednesday, I was like, well, surely today. So I was just in bed waiting. So I didn't really have time to look into anything else. So no, I don't know. But I mean, they'll be worried because like, why wouldn't you? It's not some sinister plan. It's just they've obviously tried to go the ticketless route because, well, they're just an innovative club, aren't they? And it's like, and part of the reason I've not written anything mainly is because I've not had the opportunity to. But part of me just think, well, I want to wait and see how it actually works at the Norwich game, because there's a lot of people going, oh, it's fine for me, but what about Dave from Moston who's 82? And it's like, yeah, but how many people I know a lot of old people who do have smartphones. Like, we're worried about a big proportion of old people who won't be able to get into the ground. My view is people worry about things too much generally in life, and then when it comes to it, how many times we get to a World Cup and it's always, oh, the airports aren't ready, the stadiums aren't ready. How many? Like, it's always fine. It's always fine. It's always fine. So I'm thinking it might be a problem at the Norwich game. It probably will be. I wouldn't be surprised if the game was delayed by half an hour. It probably won't be, but I wouldn't be surprised. And it probably will be a bit of a mess for the Arsenal game as well. But I think within a month it'll be all right. It's not a problem. Like, but no one's going to be asked. Like, I certainly get the point. Like, people have wasted like hours and hours on the phone, haven't they? They've been on hold for like 50 hours or something, which is not good enough. Like, it's nowhere near good enough. And that is worth an article exploring what's gone on. It's worth, people being annoyed by that. I'm not saying, look, don't worry about it, because that is bad. And, I've seen tweets from people today who said they still haven't got their tickets to print out. Like, their e-ticket doesn't work and they haven't got their PDF ticket yet. And this was like 10 o'clock the day of the game. So I know it's been bad. But I'm wondering to say just how bad the implementation is going to be. Because also it reminds me, in terms of City being innovative and working things through and moving things on, now maybe they've not done it in the best way, and that's the issue. But in terms of the e-tickets, somebody said to me, Main Road, City were one of the first clubs to introduce a plastic season card rather than a book of tickets anyway, which people didn't like at the time, but then it just becomes normal. And also just reminds me of like when Apple like changed the connection on your phone. You know, when they had a different port for the headphones and the charger, but now it's the same. And people were like, oh, well, but like now everyone's just got the same. You've got less cables to worry about. It's better. Like it's a bit of a pain in the ass in the short term when they go, oh, they're trying to make us buy phones, but you just got to move on. Like it's the same with the USB ports and stuff. Like you just move with the times. Like that's how it is. And I think there's an element of moving with the times. The problem is the execution, and we'll find out how bad the execution is on Saturday and in the weeks to follow. And I'll have a look. I'll speak to the club I'll speak to the club officially in terms of, you know, the press face inside, and I'll speak to people within the club in terms of, oh God, we really fucked this up, if that's what they're thinking.
Well, I'll tweet you later when I go.
I'm not sure.
I'll tweet you later when I go because I've got the ticket on my watch, so I'll let you know how it goes.
Please, honestly, please do. I will. The thing is, as well, Joe Butterfield did something for City Extra.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
He was like, if you're having problems with this, DM me. And then he did a big article with people's issues, and it's like, well, basically, that's what I would have done anyway. So I was thinking, let's just see at the actual game, because I'm sure there will be an element of people going, oh, it was actually all right.
Yeah, I'm sure the implementation is actually going to be fine. Like, it's no problem for me. I have a phone, I have a watch, like everything I have is basically connected, and I can get the ticket.
And most people do. Like, most people do. Let's be honest. Like this whole, it's fine for me, but I worry about this old person. It's like the old person will be all right. Like,
yeah, they will.
You can print off the tickets, and look, it might be a shambles today. It really might be a shambles today, but it'll be fine within a month. You know, there'll be a better system in place. And yeah, it should have been better. It should have been better for like a club of City size and how much they kind of dedicate to getting things right, whether it's for, especially for fans, but they always try and do things the right way, public facing. So it should have been better. But like, I think people always, not City fans, just everything, like I said about the World Cups, people just overreact to things, like to moan about things. But like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll be a bigger disaster today than I thought. But within a month, it'll be fine.
Yeah, all right. I just promised someone that I'd ask you that question because it's been playing on our minds.
No, that's fine. And people have said, like, are you going to do something about it? And last Sunday, it was in the Q&A, and I was like, is a bit of a fan gripe something for the media? And obviously, the bigger it's got, it is like, yeah, it is. And like, if it was the MEN, it's obviously something that I'd imagine they'd be all. Don't think they are. Something they'd be all over. And to be fair, I should be as well. But like I say, for various different reasons, we've not been. But it's definitely something I'm going to look at, whatever happens this weekend.
Yeah, as I say, it's just one of those things that is a small thing that I think people do overlook. I think the club sometimes do overlook things like that. Like, yeah, it is of course easier to do e-ticketing, but there's something special about receiving that little box every season. Yeah. Like I keep mine, and a friend of mine's been going since he was like 6, and he's got all of them. You know, these boxes and the scarves and whatever else comes in them. And it becomes more of an experience when you buy a season ticket like that. So I get the shift because, logistically, it makes so much more sense. But
yeah, I mean, to be honest, if I was, I'd want the mobile ticket's fine. No problem with that. But I'd still want the box of like scarves and hats and stuff and badges.
Yeah. I mean, where do you think all they come from? They're season box scarves. So yeah,
I'm surprised they've not, because I guess they've not said because of COVID we're not doing it this year. I guess they've just been nothing.
No, as a fan, I had literally nothing. I just got an email saying it's going to be an e-ticket this season.
Yeah,
I've not heard anything about a gift.
You'd like to think that next summer. I'll ask again. People are probably asking me this because I'm one of the people who can just pick up the phone and speak to somebody at the club and say what's going on. Yeah. I will get to that because I know it's important. I increasingly realise how important it is for fans as well. But yeah, one of the things I'll ask is, will you be giving people scarves again next summer? Because it just seems like that's just a tradition you can't take away. You can move with the times and stuff and take things online, but like scarves and stuff are just things that you're always going to have in football.
Yeah.
And those little gestures are things that mean a lot. So yeah, I'd be surprised if they took those away forever. But I'll ask him about that.
Yeah, it's made more sense. The whole moving away from plastic as well thing when they released the whole edible coffee cups, zero plastic pint pots and things like that.
Classic City, that. But again, fair enough. Like
it makes more sense.
City because people will take the piss, but like that's a good thing, isn't it?
Hmm.
Like that has to be a good thing. Apparently, I saw a tweet yesterday. Apparently, they taste all right.
Actually, fantastic. I might try one today. I might order a coffee, especially.
In fact, I'm sure once it's been soaked in coffee, it probably tastes even better.
Probably.
Like a wafer, like
Maybe
coffee
that's
infused
it.
wafer. It's all
It's
right,
just, yeah, it's the ultimate British cup. It's a tea and biscuit in one.
Yeah, perfect.
Anyway, sorry, I'm sure Steve wants to get back onto transfers.
Oh no, that was much better.
That was a bit more, yeah. I don't. Do you think we'll have a striker by the end of the transfer window, or is it literally all in?
The answer's the same, because it's going to be. The answer's basically, are we going to get Kane or not? Because I don't think
there's no one else.
There's anybody else, and unless, and this is one of those typical journalistic cop-out things you have to do, but unless there's like some kind of late desperation from City going, shit, we lost against Norwich, we're not getting Kane, we need to get somebody in. Where's Danny Ings? Oh, he's gone to Villa. You know, unless there's something like that.
Yeah, because I was always at that. I was always at that stage of, I really want Haaland, but because I always thought myself personally would have been Danny Ings would have been a stopgap.
Yeah,
and then go for Haaland next summer. But it just doesn't look that way now, does it? With how it's going with Haaland, and obviously now Bayern have obviously said that they would like him. It sort of turns the tables a little bit, and obviously now Lewandowski saying that he wants another challenge. It's sort of moving in that direction that Haaland will probably go Bayern.
Possibly. Like the only thing that I think with Haaland is, like, because like Chelsea fans have been saying the same, they've wanted Haaland, and everyone's like, just go and get Haaland, offer him loads of money now, and it's like, he's obviously just not for sale. But also, what I'm thinking is, it wouldn't surprise me if something's been sorted already. But then you think, where could he be sorted to? Because I think Real Madrid are pretty locked in with Mbappe.
Yeah.
In terms of that's who they want.
Yeah.
So they won't have Haaland sorted if they want Mbappe that badly, because they're not that club anymore. They can't afford it. Barca can't afford anyone.
No.
PSG, probably not. Probably not. You wouldn't rule it out. But the other one's Bayern, because obviously Chelsea aren't locked in because Lukaku.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Somebody who knows Sancho said to me that Haaland won't go to United because of what happened to his dad. And I don't know if he knows that because he knows Sancho, and Sancho said, oh yeah, this is what it is, or if that's just what any of us could say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But I don't think it's locked in with United. Although you could say the fact they've not bought anyone this summer suggests that they're waiting. But I just wonder if the whole reason nobody's getting him is just because it's just impossible. And it's impossible, one, because Dortmund won't sell, and maybe two, because something's sorted. But I'm not sure. Maybe there will be a big explosion for him next summer. But like you say, as far as City are concerned, if City get Kane, then they ain't going to be bidding whatever for Haaland next summer. And the same for Chelsea.
I just think, I mean, my own personal opinion is I can't see us going into another. I don't want to see us going into another season without a number 9. I'm not that false 9. I don't like it. But obviously it done well for us last season. But obviously with all of this focus on Kane, obviously there is probably going to be no one else unless, like you say, it's desperate. But City will never be desperate now and get anyone. So if it's not Kane, we probably won't do anything in January. In a sense, do you think? Because there was that situation with Mahrez, wasn't it, when sort of Leicester were like saying, look, you're going to have to pay £90 million for him in January, but wait 5 months and you can get him for 60 in the summer. I just think if it's not Kane or Haaland, who else? Has there been anyone else in the pipeline that we just don't really know about that we may get next summer now if Kane might not happen?
No, because there was 4 names that were kind of mentioned to players when they were renewing their contracts, in terms of players were saying, well, what are we doing this summer? You know, how competitive are we going to be? And they were like, well, we want a striker. And they were like, we want Haaland. I don't know. In fact, I don't know if Kane was on that, but obviously they want Kane. I don't know if Kane was in that conversation, sorry, but Haaland was in that conversation. Darwin Núñez was in that conversation, but like, he might go to Brighton. So, and Danny Ings is in that conversation. So it's like, they've obviously just had a list and just told the players, the City players. Well, these are the kind of people we're looking at. But obviously, they can't have said. Well, they can't have said they're all equal, obviously, because if the player go, well, who's this guy? Because Haaland isn't the same billing as the others, is he? So those are the four names really that there has been interested in. I'm trying to think if even there's been anyone else reported that I've not heard myself. Can you think of any other striker that's been reported?
I had Andre Silva.
Oh yeah. But he didn't need to get a transfer somewhere else.
Yeah,
he went
to like 20 to 25 million pound, I think it was. I can't remember.
So I mean, he might have been on that same kind of maybe.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they didn't push it because they just won Kane. So he might have been. I don't know. I remember doing something at Christmas in terms of looking at data to find players similar to Haaland and or Mbappe, and he was on it. So it didn't surprise me that there were stories linking them because I thought, maybe they do see him as somebody who's interested, as somebody who's similar, and therefore they're interested. But obviously, the fact that they let him go somewhere else shows that they weren't that interested. Same with Ings and same with Nunez and whatever.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know. But it's always different. It's always different. Like this summer's plans are kind of, you see who's on the market. If for argument's sake they'd given up on Kane a month ago and saw who was on the market in the last 2 months of the transfer window, it'll be different to who's going to be on the market next summer. Yeah. And obviously you'd start looking now for who it could be, but for a start, Haaland would feasibly be on the market next summer. So,
of course, yeah, it's a difficult one. Like I say, just from a personal City sort of point of view, I would like a striker in. Obviously, I know Liam Delap's obviously just signed a new deal, which is great for the future. But they're saying obviously he might be loaned out, might go to Anderlecht to the company, or there's always
any loan plans at the moment. I don't think there's any loan plans at the moment.
So,
well, I asked two because on Thursday I heard he was getting a new contract. So I messaged two people to check and said, is he going to go straight out on loan? Because that's often what happens, isn't it? Sign a new contract and join someone on loan. And they both said no on the loan, and one said he's injured for a month anyway. Right. I know there was something on Twitter the other day that he's back in full training, but somebody just said, who would know? Just said he's injured for a month anyway, so no loan. So I don't know if that will be sorted out later on or even could be, but at the moment it doesn't seem like it.
Okay.
Right.
And the obviously there's been reports about the Serbian striker Dusan Vlahovic from Fiorentina. Is there anything behind that? Or
apparently not, no.
No, just rumblings from an agent, likely.
I've no idea where it's come from. Obviously there's reports in Italy, and one was saying it's pretty much done, but City is saying forget that. It's just Kane. They just want Kane.
It's just
simple as that.
I want to ask a stupid question that's come out, and obviously the absolute rife with Cristiano Ronaldo and Jorge Mendes. Did Jorge Mendes offer him?
Yeah, I think so. Mendes has been in Manchester all week. He's been at the CFA. I don't know how many times, but at least a couple of times. And because the reason I've always said that Bernardo would probably go, obviously we knew he was going to be for sale anyway, and why I still think that he'll go is because in football, George Mendes has moved things around, and agents move things around, but George Mendes in particular, there are certain clubs, Atletico Madrid, Juventus, not so much Valencia in this case, but clubs where he's got a lot of influence, Wolverhampton, Tottenham now with Mourinho and Nuno, where he can just move people around. Obviously it's harder, but I think eventually he'll sort something out with Bernardo. But that's what's happened this week, basically. He is in Manchester, and the real world outcome of him moving things around is him making suggestions. So he said, oh, well, how about Bernardo goes to Spurs? And he's just not having it. He doesn't want it. But obviously that might have made the Kane thing easier. That might have unblocked things if Spurs go, okay, yeah, we'll take him. But he doesn't want to do it. And also, for whatever reason, it seems that he's offering Ronaldo around. I don't know who else has got the offer, but I think he said to City, you can have Ronaldo if you want. And they're like, no. I don't know exactly why, because I don't know exactly why, but I guess it's probably just the age thing. And at least with Kane, there is the pretense. We could have 3 great years. He could have 5 very good years, whatever. Yeah. But with Ronaldo, it's basically, that's a very, very, very expensive stopgap.
It's a year-on-year gamble, isn't it, I think, with Ronaldo now?
Yeah, and also City like to do their due diligence, and everything needs to be, would this guy be great for us? I'm sure they've not even looked at Ronaldo. And, the kind of thing they would want to do. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, seemingly, it's just something they just said no to straight away. But yeah, that's just Mendes just trying to make things happen. That's how it works, and that's why I still think Bernardo will go, because he's a Mendes client, and there's plenty of Mendes clubs around Europe who will get something in the end. I saw talk of like Chelsea going for Saul Niguez, and then if he goes from Atletico, then it's like, well, Atletico have got a bit of money and they could maybe get Bernardo.
Yeah,
then
Bernardo.
That wouldn't surprise me. And obviously that's a club where Mendes has a lot of say as well. So I think it'll be something like that. But obviously, if one of those transfers first doesn't happen, then it becomes much harder for Bernardo. But yeah, we'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, it's a shame to see Bernardo go. I really like him, but it becomes one of those: is if the player doesn't want to be at the club anymore,
yeah, exactly,
let them go.
It's just one of those, isn't it? It's like, so some people say he's better than Grealish. I think he's probably better than Grealish individually, but with Mahrez on the right wing, you don't really need Bernardo on the right wing. With De Bruyne in the right number 8, you don't really need him there. With De Bruyne, Foden, Sterling as a false 9, Mahrez as a false 9, you don't need him there. So as much as he's a great player, City can do without him. And with Grealish, I think he gives just extra cutting edge, something a bit different, which the squad doesn't have. So I get that. But I know people are saying, oh, Bernardo's better than Grealish, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, well, whether that's the case or not, if he wants to go, then let him go. It's the same with Laporte.
Yeah.
I don't think Laporte is going to go now, but people are, we shouldn't be selling him. It's like, well, he wants to go and he's not very happy about being around. So it would be better for the atmosphere if he was moved on. If this was FIFA or Football Manager and his mood was great and he played 100% to his abilities whenever he's put in the team, great, keep him. But that's not the reality, is it? And that's the thing with Bernardo. It's like, it is what it is.
Yeah. Are the same sort of rumours true with João Cancelo as well? Then is he also possibly unhappy and wanting to force a move out?
I don't think so.
It was all three of them.
I don't think Cancelo is that actively like, I want to go now. Could be wrong. I don't think so. In the first lockdown, when the virus was first kicking off, when he was linked to Barca, I wasn't on top of that at the time because I was on paternity leave and other world priorities. But it was well reported at the time. And since then, I've been told that he did. He did want to leave at that point, and eventually, I think Juan Leo helped convince him to stay. But at the end of last season, he was pissed off with losing out. When he didn't play in the Dortmund second leg, and around then, he's not great when he loses his place, and he's one of those who moans a bit or can moan a bit. Isn't necessarily Pep's biggest fan, but doesn't as far as I know, that's not crossed the threshold into wanting to leave. There's kind of levels to unhappiness and discontent. There's people who can be not especially happy, but still not moan and play really well, like Bernardo. And there's some who moan a bit more, like, let's just say others we've mentioned. And there's some who moan a bit more and want to leave, like others we've mentioned.
Yeah. So I think, so now, I'll move away from the striker situation because it just is what it is. For me personally now, it's like I'd probably say another left back and a holding midfielder, because I don't know if Rodri is Fernandinho-esque in that role. For me personally, is that something that City, if the City are thinking about, maybe obviously replacing Fernandinho, obviously sign another year, and then obviously this stuff with Mendy at left back? No,
at this point, look, what they're going to do next summer is not something that's on my radar. I'm working hard enough to try and find out what they're doing this summer. What they're going to do next summer, I'm sure they'll have an idea maybe, but they'll firm that up in the coming months. Just the thing is, they've not signed a left back for so long. It makes you think they're never going to sign one. But you would think if they do get a striker this summer, then they start looking at the other areas of their squad, and they go left back, and they go Fernandinho. So it's a safe bet. Like, you can't imagine them looking for anything else. But then, like with Bernardo going, if somebody wants to leave, let's say Cancelo wants to leave, like hypothetically over the next year, then they're like, oh, we need a right back as well. So things then change. Or let's say Mahrez wants to go, or he doesn't sign a new contract, and he's only got a year left and they sell him, then they need another winger, don't they then? But if the squad stays strong and it is as it is, then I'm sure they'll go, left back, defensive midfield.
Yeah. Awesome. Right. Well, we've been talking for about 35 minutes straight there, so I think I'm happy. Thanks so much for coming on, Sam. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on with us. Is there anything you wanted to cover just before I say goodbye?
No, I don't think so. Well, look, the Norwich game's in about 3 hours, so we'll have a much better idea of what's going on with all things City after that. But nah, it's fine. No, I think this season, if they sign Kane, I'd be very confident they win the league. I think they'd still be capable of it, but I think they'd be much closer to the other pack of Liverpool, Chelsea, and to a lesser extent United.
If we don't get Kane,
if they get Kane, I think it'll change the game.
If we don't get Kane, who's to win for you? Who wins the league?
Like I said, I don't know. I think City can still do it, but it'll be a lot closer. I still think Liverpool are City's biggest challenges. So I'd say if not City, then Liverpool.
Really?
But
wow.
We'll see how it goes. Obviously Chelsea are up there, but I just think Liverpool with Chelsea, there's a huge gap in consistency of winning enough games to be champions that they're not at yet. You know, like they're a solid top 4 team, but they haven't got that extra consistency to keep winning games. Now, is Lukaku enough to make them do that? Possibly, but I'm not sure. Whereas I've seen before that Liverpool can do it. And even the way they finished last season when centre-back started coming back and the midfielders went back into midfield, they finished very strongly. So it wouldn't surprise me if Liverpool did it. Whereas with Chelsea, there's just a bit more of an unknown.
And I think the fans will help Liverpool massively as well.
That as well.
Yeah, because they started having a terrible poor form at home as well, didn't they, for a while? Cop suddenly became a bit of a burial ground rather than a fortress.
And we managed to win there, so that must...
Yeah, first time in a long time. Right, anyway, thank you again, Sam, for coming on. Absolute pleasure having you on with us. And still at The Athletic, still covering Manchester City. That's not changed in the last 40 minutes. So we'll stay with
Not
that.
as far as I know.
No, not want to join City Daily. I think we can't pay you for that much, but we'd love to have you.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. All right.
Say that.
We'll get back to you. I'll draw up a contract.
I'm sure if Kane doesn't happen, my reputation would be ruined, and I'll need to start from scratch. So that's how it works. So we'll
welcome you. Thanks so much for coming on. Thank you, Steve, for joining us once again, and we will catch you next time. Say goodbye, Steve.
See you later, City Dailies.
Have a little goodbye, Sam.
See you later, City Dailies.
Apparently, this is a new thing. See you later, City Dailies. And of course, up the Blues.